American commanders secretly sent a report describing Australian soldiers in Vietnam as useless, cowardly, and ineffective because they moved too slowly and refused to fight aggressively, instead of defending themselves or changing their approach. Australian command made a decision that convinced the Americans they had lost their minds. What did the Australians understand about jungle warfare that made their enemies afraid and their critics completely wrong? On January 14, 1967, in Phuoc, Province, South Vietnam, at the Australian Task Force base in Nui Dat, monsoon rain slammed against a canvas tent. Inside the headquarters, Brigadier O.D. Jackson sat at his metal desk, reading a folder stamped "Confidential, Eyes Only." The document had arrived that morning from American headquarters in Saigon. Jackson read carefully, his expression calm, but his jaw tightening with each page. The report came from MCV, the American command running the war. American officers had observed Australian troops for months, recording everything they saw. Their conclusions filled 15 typed pages, and none of it was flattering. The Americans wrote that Australian units lacked aggression, that their operational tempo was too slow, and that they failed to engage the enemy with sufficient force. One advisor claimed Australian patrols moved like elderly men strolling in a park, rather than soldiers hunting an enemy. The statistics seemed to support this. Australian units patrolled only 1 to 2 kilometers over 14 days, while American companies advanced 4 to 6 kilometers every day. Australians fired 1 round for every 10 fired by Americans. On paper, the Australians looked slow, frightened, and ineffective. Outside, the rain intensified. The base at Nui Dat sat within 108 square kilometers of jungle that made up Australia's area of responsibility. The Americans called it a tactical area of responsibility, but control on a map meant nothing on the ground. The jungle ruled itself. Dense triple canopy rainforest blocked sunlight. A man could stand 15 meters away and remain unseen. The heat reached 38 degrees at midday. Humidity stayed near 90%. Rifles rusted overnight. Batteries failed. Food rotted. Canvas molded. The jungle consumed everything human. The enemy thrived there. The D445 VC Battalion controlled the interior with 400 to 500 fighters who knew every trail and stream. Beyond them, the 274th VC Regiment operated. From mountain bases with more than 2,000 troops, they moved unseen, struck in sudden ambushes, and vanished before soldiers understood what was happening. American doctrine believed aggression was the answer. Large units sweeping fast, overwhelming. Firepower and body counts would win the war. Commanders pushed speed and constant contact, shooting first and asking later. Australian doctrine was the opposite, shaped by earlier fighting in Malaya. Small patrols, slow movement, careful tracking, ambush over firefight, firing only with perfect shots. To Americans, this looked weak and fearful. This difference caused friction. American commanders questioned whether Australians were pulling their weight. The classified report in Jackson's hands made it clear the Americans thought their allies were useless. Jackson finished reading and sat silently as rain drummed on the tent. Diesel fumes mixed with wet canvas and smoke. Then he reached for the telephone. Jackson did not call Saigon to defend his men. He did not explain or ask for patience. Instead, he issued new orders to his battalion commanders. The orders did not demand faster movement or more fire. They demanded the opposite. Patrols would slow down, further stay in the jungle longer, and fire even less. Jackson doubled down on everything the Americans criticized, making it seem the Australians had lost their minds. Jackson understood what the Americans did not. In this terrain, aggression got you killed. Speed led to ambush. Heavy fire revealed positions and wasted ammunition. Survival required becoming part of the jungle, moving like shadows, watching like predators, striking briefly, then vanishing. 7 months earlier, Australian troops had proven this at Long Tan, where 108 soldiers faced 2,500 enemy fighters, outnumbered 23 to 1. They killed more than 245 enemy soldiers, while losing only 18. The evidence was undeniable, Jackson would answer criticism. With results within 24 hours, the orders spread down the chain. Patrol tempo slowed. 6-man patrols now stayed out 21 days, moving as little as 800 meters per day. Soldiers cut rations, carried less weight to move quietly. SAS teams went further, inserting 4-man teams for 28 days, without resupply, disappearing completely into the jungle. Training. Reversed conventional thinking. Soldiers learned to read the ground like a book. A bent blade of grass revealed hours-old movement. Footprints showed footwear, broken twigs, and disturbed leaves told stories. Noise discipline became absolute. Any sound restarted training. Men taped gear and learned impossible movement, stepping between vines, breathing silently. Contrast with American units was stark. American companies of 30 to 40 men moved 4 to 6 kilometers daily, stayed out 7 days, and carried thousands of rounds, expecting to use them. Australians moved 1 to 2 kilometers, stayed out weeks, and carried far less ammunition. SAS patrols carried only 500 rounds total. The philosophy differed. Americans sought immediate destruction. Australians sought understanding first, learning patterns and routes before striking once. Decisively. Results appeared quickly. In February 1967, during Operation Ingham, Australians tracked a VC tac squad for 6 days, mapping routes and contacts before ambushing them, killing 8 enemies in seconds, capturing documents and money without injury. Meanwhile, nearby American units killed 3 enemies with 2 wounded, learning nothing. The enemy noticed early VC reports, mocked Australians as cowards. Later reports warned they moved like ghosts and struck like vipers. VC units avoided Australian areas and retreated when encountered inside Australian ranks. Doubt grew. Soldiers returned from weeks in the jungle, having fired little. While Americans fought constant battles, younger men questioned the patience. Then statistics arrived. Kill ratios climbed. 15 to 1, then 18 to 1. SAS operations reached 45 to 1. Australian casualties dropped 67% compared to Americans. Patience worked too. Understand why Australian command protected this method. One must return to August 18, 1966. A Long Tan Delta company of the 6th Battalion moved through a rubber plantation after tracking mortar teams. Monsoon rain reduced visibility. At 4 p.m. the enemy struck. 3 battalions totaling 2,500 fighters ambushed the Australians. The Australians were outnumbered 23 to 1. Commander ordered his men to advance closing distance to negate enemy mortar and force close combat. Platoons held positions in old craters, maintaining calm radio discipline. At 5:30 New Zealand artillery arrived, firing 3,000 rounds. Danger close, turning the battlefield lethal. Individuals showed extraordinary courage, holding positions, feeding machine guns under fire. At 7:45 armored vehicles arrived, breaking the assault. By morning, 18 Australians were dead, 24 wounded. 245 enemy bodies lay on the field, with many more removed. Enemy reports later admitted surprise at Australian discipline and artillery coordination. 5 months later, Americans still called these methods useless. By mid-1967, Australian units achieved kill ratios of 22 to 1. Casualty rates dropped dramatically. Intelligence value was rated exceptional, even by MACV. SAS units reached 45 to 1. Some Americans requested Australians teach their methods, but cultural resistance remained. Body count still drove promotion. Patience could not be taught quickly. Enemy adaptation proved success. By 1968 VC, directives ordered avoidance of Australian sectors. The D445 Battalion relocated north, abandoning its territory. Tax collection dropped, defections rose. Locals believed Australians were winning. Brigadier Jackson retired quietly. His vindication came without fanfare. Reports were amended silently. Soldiers returned home without parades. Their tactical success could not overcome strategic failure, corrupt governance, shifting strategy, and waning political will doomed the war. Australian tactics influenced later special forces doctrine, worldwide intelligence over body count observation before destruction became core principles. The jungle reclaimed. Long tan rubber trees grew again. Shell casings remained. The Australian response to criticism was demonstration, not explanation. They proved patience, precision, and intelligence outperformed aggression, but the final lesson was darker. Tactical excellence cannot fix broken strategy. You can win every battle and still lose the war. The reports calling Australians useless now gather dust. The soldiers are old men carrying memories of a jungle that taught them how to fight, and the harder truth that fighting well is not enough. The rain still falls, the jungle still grows, and the lesson remains: victory in battle is not victory in war. And sometimes the bravest act is accepting being called useless by those who do not understand.